Call the organizational meeting of the Caroline County Board of Supervisors to order this January 14th, 2014. Our first order of business is the election of chairman, and so I'll entertain nominations for chairman for the calendar year 2014.
Mr. Culley, I'd like to nominate Mr. Floyd Thomas to be chairman for the 2014 year for the Board of Supervisors.
Are there any other nominations?
Mr. Culley, I'd like to nominate Mr. Calvin Taylor. Mr. Taylor served as vice chairman of this board for the past year, and I think he's done a good job and worked well, and I would certainly like to nominate him.
All right, we have two nominations. Are there any others? Motion to close nominations?
So moved, Mr. Culley.
Second.
Our nominations are closed. All right. I would assume you would vote for the first one and then discuss second. So the first nomination first. Yes. All right. All in favor of Mr. Thomas serving as chairman for calendar year 2014 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That, I guess, would require a roll call vote. Mr. Seeley?
Aye.
Mr. Black? Aye. Mr. Underwood?
Aye.
Mr. Akers?
Aye.
Mr. Taylor?
Aye.
Mr. Thomas? Aye. So that carried unanimous, so I would assume there was no need for good superintendent moot. All right. Congratulations, Mr. Chairman. You can certainly take the helm.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Culley, and thank you, board members. Next agenda item is the election of vice chairman. Chair will now entertain motions for vice chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to nominate Mr. Seeley as vice chairman.
Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Are there any other nominations? Motion to close the nominations?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second?
Second.
All in favor of Mr. Seeley being vice chairman, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any other? So Mr. Seeley be the vice chairman. We'll take a second and rearrange, plug in. Then our next order of business would be adoption of the rules.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we adopt the rules as presented.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Seeley makes a motion we adopt the rules as presented, which would be the same rules we had for last year. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously. Schedule for our regular meetings is in the board packet. Any changes we see right now that we would like to change? We're still going to stick with 2 meetings on the odd months, 1 meeting on the even months. And of course, the board has, with the consent of the majority, managed to move meetings based on board member schedule. So if anyone would like to make a motion to keep the schedule the same for 2014, that would be in order.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Akers, seconded by Mr. Seeley. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. That motion carries. Just trying to get ready to move. So our next one is board appointment. Give me 1 second.
Mr. Chairman.
Could you give me 1 second?
Sure.
I didn't plug in. I'm trying to find it. Okay. Yes, you had a question?
No, I read something wrong. Apologize.
Can I see yours, Mr. Collins, please? Board appointments?
There's White.
I just saw him. Oh, I got it. Okay. I'm sorry. Thank you. Our next order of business is Board of Supervisors appointments. Rappahannock Area of Aging. Mr. Underwood was on that before. Mr. Underwood, or would anyone else like to serve? If you want to serve on that?
I don't know. I'm on the George Black. If nobody else wants to,
Mr. Underwood,
I'll continue to serve at the board's leisure.
you want to continue to serve?
I will at the board's leisure.
Okay. Let's do them all, and then if they change, we'll have something. Next one I have the Social Services Board.
Mr.
Seeley's
Chairman,
on
I've
that.
been asked by the board if I'd continue one more year with a new director, and I've assured them that I would be willing to do that if that is the pleasure of the board.
And we just had a new Social Services Director,
Right.
so that's probably a good idea. Okay, Mr. Seeley's willing to serve on that. George Washington Regional Commission, Mr. Black is on there, and Mr. Taylor. Mr. Black?
Great. I enjoy that very much. Yes, I'd like to continue.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I wouldn't mind going back to George Washington Regional Commission if it's okay with Mr. Taylor. There's some upcoming stuff, and I think I could be helpful to the county there, actually,
that's fine.
with the makeup of the board there. It's an offer, if that's okay.
He said that was fine with him?
I have no problem.
Okay. All right, so Mr. Seeley is going to be GWRC.
You want to do AAA?
Yeah, I'll do ours.
Mr. Chairman, I'll step down and let Mr.
Mr. Taylor do our okay.
AAA, if he wants to do that. Yeah, I mentioned it, so I served last year, so.
Rappahannock Regional Disability Services Board, Mr. Cully's going to keep doing that. Rappahannock River Basin Commission, Mr. Black was on there before, and you said they meet quarterly.
Yes.
Anyone else like to be on that? No?
Yep.
They don't meet where you want to meet. Nobody else?
I'll
Mr.
continue,
Black? Fredericksburg Regional Alliance, Mr. Akers.
I would like to continue to serve on that board if possible.
Okay, that's all we have here.
Mr. Thomas, I would like to stay on military affairs with BRAC coming as well. I'm on one of the BRAC commissions and working with them on that.
I'm sorry, Mr. Seeley, I did miss Military Affairs. Fredericksburg Chamber of Commerce Military Affairs Council. And you're still on that. Okay. So all of the appointments we had last year will be continued this year, with the exception of Mr. Taylor serving on RAAA and Mr. Seeley serving on GWRC. Okay, is there a motion to that effect?
I make a motion we accept as presented, Mr. Chairman.
Second?
Okay, motion made by Mr. Seeley, seconded by Mr. Akers. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. That appears to be all we have to do in the organizational meeting. So we will take a motion to close the organizational meeting.
So moved. Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Organizational meeting is closed. We'll take a second and rearrange, and that takes care of item 1.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, I think we need to add it to the agenda at least for us to, when we do the agenda, add it as an addendum.
I think it
Charlie
should be.
Payne thing.
For him being on CTV?
Just conversation and then a vote at our next meeting.
I think we need to go ahead and vote today to get a resolution together,
When is it, a resolution? Okay.
because he's going to be
Okay.
they're going to make a decision.
We will call the regular meeting of the Board of Supervisors to order. Let the record state that all board members are here. Mr. Taylor representing Port Royal, Mr. Black representing Western Carolina, Mr. Underwood representing Reedy Church, Mr. Akers representing Madison, Mr. Seeley representing Bowling Green, and I'm Floyd Thomas representing the Mattaponi District. Our first order of business will be an invocation. And I'm going to do that, so if you please stand and join me in the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Dear Father God, we come before you this day to first thank you for your many blessings and to thank you for your grace. Dear Father God, as we begin this new year, 2014, we ask that you guide us, direct us, help us make Caroline County better. Allow us to debate, allow us to discuss, and allow us to come to the conclusion that what we do should be in the best interest of the citizens of Caroline and to make Caroline a better place. Let us all agree or disagree, but not be disagreeable. Let us work together for the one goal of making Caroline a better place. Dear Father God, I ask these prayers in the name of our risen Savior, Jesus the Christ. Amen. Amen. Please join me for the pledge. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Mr. Cully, do you have any amendments to the agenda?
No, sir. We had added an emailed resolution to you Friday, but I think that's the only thing that we had.
The resolution for the support of the registrars.
The bills in the General
Right.
Assembly for the registrar and/or elections.
Right, which basically helped the county not be forced to pay for elections. The state would take care of it, and to try to fix the issue we talked about from VACO. I'm glad Larry's here. See how he popped up when I said VACO. But during the VACO conference, one of the things that was a priority was to have local districts contiguous, I guess. So we don't have split districts in the county, which...
With General Assembly districts?
Right, with General Assembly. So that was the resolution. We got the email, I think, from Mrs. Moen. I sent it to Charlie. I didn't think there was any problem with us having a resolution to support those. If there is, let us know. If not, we've got that, and we could put that on the agenda to move forward. Mr. Underwood, you had something you wanted to add?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to add to the agenda a discussion of supporting Mr. Charlie Payne as a representative for the Fredericksburg District Commonwealth Transportation position that's now available and is going to be appointed by the governor. He's indicated he would like to serve in that capacity, and he's asking for the board's support in the drafting of a resolution. So I'd like to put that on the agenda if I could, sir.
Okay, as far as discussing it. Okay, we add things here. So 10A, it's new business. And I imagine there'll be a little discussion. Okay, opening board comments, Mr. Taylor.
I have none at this time.
Mr. Black?
Just have one. Just a reminder to people that coming up February 1st inside Lake Landor, the Polar Bear Plunge, the annual Polar Bear Plunge, will be taking place, which is put on by St. Mary's Catholic Church and Wright's Chapel United Methodist, and it's a great community event where local people raise money for people who can't afford to heat their homes. So it's a great cause and it's a great event, so if you have a chance to come out February 1st, please do so. Thank you.
At Lake?
At Lake Landor, yes.
At Lake Landor.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Underwood.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Next Tuesday, the 21st of January, I have a constituent meeting for the Reedy Church District that will be at the Don Progressive Center at 7 o'clock. So I'm asking for support of members of the board if they wish to come out and discuss it. Mr. Cully and a couple members of the staff have agreed to attend, so that's January 24th, 7 o'clock. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. That's the only one you have?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Akers?
Mr. Chairman, I read recently on communique from VACO that the governor's budget this year includes a reduction for planning districts, George Washington Planning District being one of them, of about $70,000 a year. I think this board, unless we expect the planning districts to stop serving us to the extent they have been serving us, or expect for them to go to business, I think we need to take that seriously, and we need to do what we can to make sure that that money is put back in place, because if it's not coming from the state, I'm sure the planning districts are going to look to local governing bodies to make up the difference. So I would like to see us look at that and to certainly talk to our members of the General Assembly to oppose the reduction.
Okay. I saw something like that, and I'm glad you said that, because I thought it was MPOs.
No, yeah.
So it's actually the planning districts and not the municipal planning organization. So, okay, so that would affect us at GWRC, which probably we'll have to talk about that during the budget process when we talk about funding that to see what happens. Okay?
Well, we can go ahead and let our members know, so
Right.
hopefully we'll not have to discuss that during the budget process.
Well, if they fully fund it,
Yeah.
we still had a budget thing, but if they
Oh, yeah,
fund
sure.
it more, so
Yeah.
so that's a good point. Okay, so Mr. Cully, can you put together a resolution for us to that effect? Okay, is that it, Mr. Akins?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Seeley?
I have nothing, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I only have one, and it's more of a reminder to me. The statements of economic interest are due tomorrow. If anybody has forgotten theirs, they're due tomorrow, and unlike a lot of other things, we just can't say, oh yeah, it's the same as last year. This one they have to put in, so I hope Mrs. Hall is the notary is in tomorrow so I can have somebody sign mine. Okay. Okay, so remind me to come by and see you tomorrow. Okay. You get yours in? You still working on yours? Okay. You got yours? Okay. All right, that was just a reminder. Okay. That takes care of board comments. We will now move on to agenda item number 2, which is presentations. VACO and the renewal of the employee health benefit. Ms. Grasso, good to see you again. I'm gonna do ladies first. I'm sorry, Larry, but she's gonna tell us we saved a lot of money, so I'm gonna let her go first. Ms. Grasso?
Another agenda item, so if you want to put him on.
Okay, that is true. Larry, you want to come forward? But at least we did. I want you to know my mother trained me well. I did say ladies first. Mr. Land, good to see you as always.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, members of the board. Good to be here tonight. When you made a statement about VACO having to comment on what it is you're commenting on, I got scared to death because I thought you were expecting me to maybe talk about that, and I wasn't prepared to do that. I'm going to do the best I can here. I've been asked to come here this evening and talk to you a little bit about what is happening in the General Assembly right now. And of course, as many of you know, as I think we all know, this session of the General Assembly is less than 1 week old. To this date, 2,111 bills have been introduced. And your VACO staff is in the process right now of really going through those. As a matter of fact, that process will probably continue for about another week. The deadline for members of the General Assembly to file legislation is coming up this Friday, and there's always a mad rush when you come close to that deadline by legislators to have their bills formally introduced, filed, printed, and then released into the system. And then before you know it, we may be looking at maybe 3,000, who knows, maybe 4,000 bills before the next week is over. The approach that, of course, we take in dealing with the General Assembly is the guidance that we receive from our members, and that guidance is expressed through our annual legislative program, which is ratified by our membership every November. That is our authority. That is our basis for taking the positions that we take on the bills that are introduced. I think this year we're called upon to be proactive in a number of battlefronts, and I do expect this to be a sort of what we call a General Assembly, where we will have multiple battlefronts. Excuse the warlike metaphor, but as we know, this is the way life is in the General Assembly. There are 4 areas I think that we are where I do see us concentrating. Chief among those priorities is that we definitely are vigilant about any legislation that would undermine local government taxing authority. We do perceive that there are threats to your authority to impose your B-poll taxes, your merchant's capital, and machinery and tools tax. You'll be receiving more information about this through our regular publications, which is Capital Contact, which is sent to the counties online twice a week. We've already started this, but that's just one priority area right there. Another that we really has emerged as a priority is looking at the issue of long-term teacher unfunded pension liability. We are working on this issue mostly through the budget. And of course, Dean Lynch on our staff is the point person on that issue. So that's another big thing that we're looking at. Of course, and the third battlefront deals with local land use authority. One of the major priorities in VACO's legislative program is that we are directed to oppose any legislation that weakens the authority of local government to regulate local land use. This is something that does keep us busy every year, and we do see a number of bills that have been introduced that will do this. A lot of it, some of these bills relate to the issue of certain on-farm business activities, and I could get into more detail about that if you'd like me to. You might remember last year there was legislation that would have removed from local government the authority to approve certain on-farm business activities through a special exception or special use permit. That kind of legislation is being introduced again this year. And so you can expect an awful lot of information coming back your way to encourage you to talk with your delegate and your senator about your concerns that pertains to those kinds of bills. So I could get into some bill numbers if you really want me to at this point. I don't know if time really allows for that. Okay, I just saw a head shaking down.
Well, Mike knows. Mike, you've got all those bill numbers? Okay, so you can send us an
sure.
email tomorrow, and okay.
And like I say, it will be, the information will be coming to you in a whole lot more detail, where you will see bill-by-bill summaries. You will see the status of the legislation as it is being considered in the General Assembly. Another big area, and this would be the last one that I'm going to be talking about tonight, unless you have questions about maybe some other issues, is the issue about stormwater. As I think you all know, by July 1st of 2014, local governments are required to adopt local stormwater management programs. When we had our conference back in November, it was very much a consensus of the organization that that it would be desirable for localities to have additional time to develop these local stormwater management programs. So we're going to be working in support of legislation. There have been about 5 bills actually introduced so far to do this that would provide for local governments 1 additional year to develop their local stormwater programs. It moves the compliance date from July 1st, 2014 to July 1st, 2015. I will tell you that there may be a great deal of resistance in the General Assembly to this legislation, so we'll be trying to keep you as informed as possible about this, and there may be some consideration of other approaches to provide relief for local governments along those lines, and that will be our job to have you informed about this. But one thing I would encourage you to do is definitely stay in communication with your delegate, with your senator, and also remain in communication with us. If there is an issue that concerns you and you have a resolution that you do adopt for consideration by the General Assembly, please also send it to us. We very much want to hear from you about what your particular concerns may be, in response to a particular bill, any provision in it that might affect Caroline County in a particular way. It's very important that we know about that. Also, if you have any legislative initiatives that you have asked any members of your delegation to sponsor, it's important for us to know that also. So with that, I realize that's a high altitude sort of report on what's happening so far. I can get into as much detail about some things as you would like me to. For questions that I cannot answer, of course, I'll have to refer that back because we do have a division of labor on staff.
Understand.
And we'll do our best.
Okay. Mr. Lyon, we really appreciate that. I'm sure there's some questions. Mr. Seeley just asked if we could have the bill numbers, if you have some bill numbers for the stormwater issues.
Yeah. And I'm at the point where I'm trying to keep them all straight myself. As I said, there are about 4 or 5 bills to delay. I'll give you House Bill 697 by Delegate Poindexter is one of them. Then that's one of them that provides you with a 1 month. With a 1 year delay. House Bill 1117 is another House bill, identical to the one I just mentioned. You have about 3 or 4 in the House that are identical.
Okay.
And then in the Senate, you have Senate Bill 530.
530.
Those are just 3 that I know of.
That's good.
That do provide a delay of stormwater management programs. You might also want to look at Senator Hanger. There are a number of other bills that we do support, which are meant to really, I guess I will call them reforms to the stormwater program that we do support in order to make the program more workable for localities. And that is, if you look at Senate Bill 423, a bill that we do support by Senator Emmett Hanger, who has been very helpful to us, who is also the current chair of the Senate Agriculture Committee. He has a bill that has about 5 provisions in it that we support relating to the stormwater management program. And then his counterpart, Delegate Ed Scott, has a companion measure, who also happens to be the chair of the House Agriculture Committee, and that bill is House Bill 261.
We know Ed because Ed's in Culpeper.
Right.
Yeah, he's been close to us. He's been here before, so.
Right.
Yeah, we know Mr. Scott. Okay. If you don't mind, Larry, we're going to just go down the row and see if there's any questions. Mr. Taylor, you have any questions?
Yeah, just a couple. The new governor had spoken a little bit about education and maybe some increased funding. I know it's very early in the process, but do you hear any bills? Are there anything out there as far as increased funding for education?
Okay.
If you could just talk about that a little bit.
Generally, yes. I mean, let me back up a little bit and say that I am aware that Governor McDonald's introduced budget had an increase of about $500 million to help support SOQ, and that's based upon the SOQ benchmarking. I have not seen yet if the new governor is going to make any amendments to add to that. One thing that I will tell you, though, is we do support a budget amendment which will be very important to you. Under Governor McDonald's budget, there was a certain amount that was allocated for what you call non-personal services in public school, and what they did was they reduced the inflation factor, and I think we found through our analysis that totally across the state would, cause local governments to, I think, lose somewhere around $18 million compared to what was in the budget before because of a different assumption related to inflation. Non-personal services are things like supplies, utilities. I mean, that's the short list of what this covers. So we are supporting a budget amendment to try to close that gap because we think that that's the right thing to do.
Thank you. And there's just one other thing. The composite index is obviously very important to us. Do you hear of anything that might lead to a change in the composite index, or do you think it's going to be perhaps where it was last?
Right. I can't, yeah, Mr. Chairman, I can't give you the bill number. I do have it, and I could give you that later. I'll only tell you I have seen one bill that allows for a process of appeal so that a challenge can be made to a composite index. It sets up a certain committee that will hear the appeal of, say, a locality if they're not in agreement with what the official composite index is. I don't know where that'll go, but it's just a bill that we noticed recently.
And I'm just concerned because if it is changed and it affects us in a negative manner, then we would be very much interested in trying to find out whatever that bill is to do whatever we could to address that issue, because you know, we know how it works. And if the composite index does not go in our favor, then we get less funding. So
yeah, we realize what a major budget driver this is.
Right. Okay, that's all that I have.
Okay, thank you.
Not at this time.
Mr. Underwood?
No comments, Mr. Chairman, at this time.
Okay, Mr. Akers?
No, sir. I think Mr. Land's done a good job.
Mr. Sealing?
Thank you.
I'd just like to see bill numbers for these so we can take a look at them and then actually talk to at least our legislators.
Okay, sure. And as I say, I think when you see capital contact coming through, there ought to be a more comprehensive summary, and you will have the bill numbers.
Okay.
Or at least I do. Before I go on, Mr. Land, does every board member get capital contact via email? And you get it mailed to you, so we all get that? Okay, because it just came out today as far as the email version. So, okay. And my one question is probably, it's kind of related to local land use, but there's a lot of discussion about hydraulic fracking, and that's, of course, being regulated at the state, not at the locality, and basically the way things are, the locality has nothing to do with it. It's all state, Department of Minerals and Mines, and some other folks, the EPA, DEQ. Is there any push at VACO to try to get at least some zoning control over where fracking's done?
We do have a position in our legislative program that does support local government authority to approve or not approve fracking. I think that there may be some question about what the local government authority currently is, and perhaps your county attorney can address that in a lot more detail than I can. And I'll also say that Senate Bill 48, which that's a bill number I can mention. I had a feeling it might come up tonight. That is a bill that Senator Stewart has introduced, and what that does is impose a ban, actually, on hydraulic fracking in the eastern Virginia groundwater management area.
Basically east of 95.
Basically east of 95. Yeah, basically east of 95. Well, for the most part. And then there's another provision in the bill that requires Department of Environmental Quality to do an assessment of the impacts of groundwater in areas that are covered under the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Act that are not part of the Eastern Virginia groundwater management area. I'm not sure whether Caroline County falls under Eastern Virginia groundwater management area or not. I think part of it may border on it. I'm not sure. But in any event, that's what the bill does. And we are taking a closer look at that issue than we have before because we've received an awful lot of calls on that.
Well, it is, and like I said, there's no local government authority or control. Caroline is not unique into any other rural county. Of 30,000 people, probably 25,000 or 28,000 are on groundwater and wells. So it's really critical to us to have some management. I think maybe there was an article in the Fredericksburg newspaper that they'd have to do, before anything took place, they'd have to do water samples to make sure that there wasn't anything contaminated during the process. And I think that was just a proposed bill also, or maybe a thought. So anything that VACO could do to help get local authority for approval or disapproval, I think would be greatly appreciated.
Certainly. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Cully would like to add one thing to that.
We were just added into the groundwater management area this year. And one of the things we've discovered in talking to the folks about our wells that would be affected in permitting and things is our utilities director asked, the question was the fracking water, because some of those withdrawals are pretty large, and their test wells are exempt from the groundwater management, where agricultural wells or anybody with a certain gallons using it for drinking water have to comply. So it seems to me that that's sort of a misuse of water. We're going to regulate the water you drink, but we're not going to really worry about what's being pumped out for the fracking industry. So it looked like to me there needs to be some thought process back in that, just for the groundwater management area.
And Mr. Chairman, I can respond to that a little bit. I think it was back in, either it was October or November, the State Water Commission, which is a statutory commission, which has as its members several members of the General Assembly and others, some local government officials, took a hard, close look at this issue of the Eastern Virginia groundwater management area, and there was a proposal to expand it and to also look at the permitting processes associated with it for the protection of that groundwater. And I think that it seems to me you are going to see legislation relating to that. I'll try to keep you updated on that, because my recollection is that they did endorse legislation to address that issue. I don't know if that addresses all of the concerns that we have, but at least to some extent, I think there's a recognition of the problem.
Ann, was there something you were going to add?
I just wanted to point out that there is some statutory authority for local ordinances, including land use ordinances, aren't superseded by all of the natural gas and drilling requirements. So although the state does permit and license these facilities, and the county can't do anything over and above those requirements that that the state has jurisdiction over, that doesn't necessarily mean that it supersedes all local zoning. And so I haven't particularly looked at that issue, but I did just happen to have, there is some authority. So I don't know that I would say we don't have any ability. We still have local land use and zoning where it is rationally related to public health, safety, welfare.
Okay. I have happy ears. So what I'm hearing you say is, if we had some sort of restriction on drilling to maybe a specific land use type, that would be the only place it would be permitted.
Well, the statute says local land use ordinances and regulations of general purpose. So yes. So I mean, zoning is one of those. There are general police powers. We always sort of get into this question about, where does zoning bump up against state regulation? And so, that's a legal issue that we can certainly, look and see at what point, would a particular zoning requirement perhaps, get into an area that's already regulated by the state, because local ordinances can't be inconsistent with state law.
Right.
So, perhaps limiting. And Mike's standing right here, and I know he's just been, but I wouldn't say you can't do anything.
I like that.
We may be able to have standards such as setbacks. For example, we have setbacks for cell towers related to the height of adjacent structures. Some of these well drilling operations actually have fairly tall structures associated with drilling the test and production wells. So we may be able to have things like setbacks, numbers of these types of facilities, limitations on access, et cetera, et cetera. I think the regulations are fairly clear that we cannot prohibit such activities altogether under our zoning regulations. And I think that's where Ms. Cosby is speaking to. We have to make sure that we don't bump up against what we statutorily can't do. So there may be some wiggle room there under zoning to have standards related to oil and gas exploration and production.
Okay. Does the rest of the board see a need to do this? I mean, to try to have some county regulation or county control, if that's...
At this point, I'd like to just see what the General Assembly does, because I think it's going to set, it's not going to happen tomorrow, but I think we need to find out where they end up at the end of this session and see how they leave it for localities.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I
Yes, sir.
just want to say, as a point of reference, you might, a case in Rockingham County might at least inform the discussion, because it seems to me that there was a application for a permit, because there they have the Marcellus Shale formations and everything, which attracts companies that are interested in doing the hydraulic fracking, that they were considering either a special exception, special use permit, and we're going through the process. And before they came to a vote on it, I think that the company that was applying to actually conduct the hydraulic fracturing simply decided not to do it. But it might be informative to maybe look at the type of processes that they underwent when they were going through this particular controversy in their county.
Can you do that? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Lynn. I think that was probably it. That was a good one there. If there are no other questions, we appreciate your attendance, and thanks as always. You did a great job.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
And now, renewal of the employee health and dental insurance plan for the year. Mr. Partner, you going to start, or are you going to let Ms. Grasso go?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the county's one-year contract with Anthem to act as our third-party administrator for our self-insured health insurance plan expires February 28th. And as you will recall, the county, I think it's been 2 years ago, converted its health insurance from fully insured to self-insured. That has proved beneficial thus far. This past year, fortunately, we did have a very good year in terms of claim experience. And very happy to report that Anthem has indicated that we actually can project an 8.3% decrease in the cost to maintain both the same plans and the same contributions of the county and the employees for the plan year that would cover March 1st of 14 through February 28th, 15. We would continue to offer one point of service plan, Health Keepers 25, and one PPO plan, Key Care 25. Last year, if you recall, we experienced a 15% increase, so this year is obviously much better. The county staff and our consultant, Digital, Nancy Grasso, recommend, of course, that the board accept the Anthem proposal, that we keep the same percentages the county pays and the employees pay. With that 8.3% decrease that I talked about, we're projecting that the cost of health insurance would go down by approximately $187,000. Of course, the county and employees share in the cost of health insurance. Since the county covers on average about 81% of the cost, that would amount to a decrease for the county of about $152,000. Employee decrease would be around $35,000. However, as tempting as it is to try to lower that cost, that's not our recommendation, and Nancy can talk about that more. We recommend that you bank that money in the self-insurance pool to help offset future increases that are likely to come. We don't know what the impact of the employer mandate of the Affordable Care Act, which kicks in 2015, what that impact is going to be. We also would expect now required to cover part-time employees who work at least 30 hours a week to offer them health insurance. We don't know what the impact of that is going to be, but there likely will be impact there. So for all those reasons and the fact that typically there are a lot of fluctuations in claims experience. We would recommend that you bank that savings into the pool for